Just give it one more minute here for people to start rolling in. Perfect. Mark, I'll pass it over to you here to get us started.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. So hi, everyone, and thank you all for joining us tonight. We hope you enjoyed your dinner break and the events thus far today. I know I have. So in case we have not gotten to meet, my name is Mark, and I'm a competitors coordinator for this year's QEC. Unfortunately, I'm not here to announce the top 6 teams, as I'm sure you're all waiting for. That will come a bit later. But I am here to announce something much better, our next speaker, Michael Selci. Michael is a Senior Vice President in the Prairies for BDC since 2014. BDC is the Business Development Bank of Canada and has been working with Canadian entrepreneurs for over 75 years to finance and advise startup companies. Michael is responsible for overseeing BDC's financing and advisory activities in the provinces of Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. He also leads BDC's National Technology Financing Team, delivering creative debt financing to Canada's technology entrepreneurs. Beyond this role, however, Michael is an advocate for Canadian entrepreneurs. Together with his BDC team and industry partners, he is constantly seeking strategies to help businesses innovate and grow. Now, I couldn't be happier to give the floor over to Michael.
Mark, thanks so much. Very gracious introduction. Appreciate it very much, and very pleased to be here this evening to speak to all of you, all the contestants, and thanks to Nicholas, George, and the rest of the QEC committee. First of all, for putting on this competition. I think it's a fantastic competition for startups and entrepreneurs to collaborate. They get experience at pitching, which is very important, I think I'm looking forward to hearing who the final 6 are. I've reviewed the profiles of the 15 companies that put their names in, and really neat enterprises. So, congratulations on all the work and all the work you folks have put in to this journey thus far. So bear with me over the next 15 minutes or so as I take you through a look at the tech industry, some of the challenges and opportunities and things to watch for. I deal with BDC. We've got about 60,000 companies across Canada, everything from startups to companies that are in multiple seed rounds in our venture capital fund. BDC operates Canada's largest venture capital funds, either as directly or through fund of funds. And we work with all sorts of mature companies as well. So hopefully be able to bring you a little bit of insight today. So I have some visuals I'm going to share with you to help hopefully keep your attention through my presentation here. So just bear with me as I share my screen and we get started on the presentation here. Just a moment. Great. So hopefully you can see that screen, and all of you can see the presentation screen for me here.
Nothing yet there, Michael, but it still might be coming through.
How about now? No? Nothing yet. Let's try again.
Nothing. Oh, there we go. I think something's coming through here. Perfect. Looks great.
You got it? Okay, yeah. Perfect. So let me walk you through a bit of what I'm going to do here. I'm going to give you an overview of Canada's tech industry, look at what the sector holds for the future, and maybe some strategies you can use to adapt. So the industry overall, 42,000 tech businesses in Canada right now. I know we have some international competitors here, but this is what the industry looks in Canada, much smaller than what you'd find, say, in, of course, places like the United States or even the UK. but a really growing sector, frankly, 600,000 jobs in Canada in the tech industry. Most of them are small, though. Most of them are in tech software, tech computing services businesses. They're very niche players, many of them very successful in their own right, as you can tell. And then, of course, the remaining 7%, some very large companies that have been successful. You know, think about it. Skip the Dishes, right? Recently, Lightspeed, Benivity. We've got some extremely successful large tech companies that have had some successful exits. Shopify now to top the TSX. The majority of them, though, in Quebec and in Ontario, and our major clusters, of course, of tech businesses in Canada between Montreal, Toronto, and the Vancouver market. So let's look a little bit about why technology matters. I mean, all industries rely on technology these days, and it doesn't matter what sector you're in or who you're touching, everything is going to be touch some aspect of technology, and that's growing. And whether it's to increase in efficiency, improve operational efficiency, productivity, or frankly, to innovate and bring something new to market or a new process. And all of these things are centered around competitiveness and frankly, global competitiveness. We need to compete these days on a global scale, and technology is being integrated into every company and every sector in order to compete both in their local market, regional market, or international market. Canada relies on this for our GDP. So the good news here, the tech sector, it's been going strong, and it's been going strong in Canada for over the last 10 years. There's more and more capital and venture capital finding its way into the Canadian ecosystem. Hopefully, fewer companies in the future have to go south, where there's a vibrant venture capital ecosystem. But I can tell you, based on what we've been seeing more recently in Canada, that there more and more investment. 50 million just yesterday announced for jobbers here in Edmonton, Alberta, my home province these days. And it's great to see that attraction and that sector growing. So, and it's as a result of 4.3% industry growth, twice as fast as the Canadian economy, 34% job growth, triple the rate of job growth of any other sector in Canada. And of course, huge private sector investment going into tech. So this is what's been happening, and on top of everybody's minds lately is this shift to remote work. And frankly, this is good for tech companies. The access of talent is scarce in the tech industry right now, and more companies are looking for where they can access talent. And the shift to remote work is going to allow more companies to go global and think global relative to accessing that skilled labor. And that is a large part resulted in the shift to the remote workforce. More demand, of course, everybody's working from home. We expect much of that to stay. So you're going to see an increased demand for people, whether it's remote work or e-commerce or other things. This is going to continue. And then frankly, cost reduction. Companies are looking at methods and ways that they can reduce their costs overall. And remote work, frankly, is a way for them to be a cost reduction strategy and not have to rely on traditional premises. All these things combined are positive for the tech industry. So let's look additionally at what the future holds for the sector at large. And it looks promising. So regardless of what you listen to on the radio day to day or what you're hearing, the industry is doing really, really well. It has already recovered from the downturn that was experienced 10 months ago in 2020. 40% of Canadian businesses expect to invest more in technology over the next 3 years. And the expected output in growth in that industry itself is expected to be 8.5%, highest of any sector in Canada. There are some areas, though, and macroeconomic, I'll call it drivers, things to watch out for during the recovery that we should be seeing evolving in Q3, of this fiscal year. So there's some macroeconomic developments. There's some things regarding increased investment in technology, which I think is positive. I mentioned already remote work and e-commerce, but I'll talk a little more about that. And confidence in the economy is the last one. So the pandemic not only had a severe impact on the world economy and Canadian economy, but also the world economy. And that it's important to note because currently in Canada, 20% of the revenue in technology industry comes from clients outside of Canada. And if you have a look at the graph and the chart on the right, it shows you that the projected changes in the gross domestic product of Canada's main trading partners has been obviously hugely impacted by the pandemic. And the only exception of all this is actually China, which has rebounded quite quickly. But if you look at all our other major trading partners, some of them quite extensively worse than Canada in the middle of the pack have been impacted. So it's going to take a while for those customers to come back and for some of them to recover. Good news on the Canadian economy front relative to jobs. So you'll see February 2020, about 19.2 million Canadians employed in Canada. All of a sudden, it dropped to 16 million when the pandemic hit. Of course, layoffs, 3 million plus employees were laid off. But that rebounded quite quickly in October. We're already back up to 18.6 million, about 97% of pre-pandemic levels. And we hope that that continues to grow as we start to recover. The one point I would make here for everybody listening in is that the wage subsidies and the rent subsidies and all these things that have been somewhat artificially propping up liquidity in the market and propping up companies is going to go away. So a lot of these programs will end or are expected that the government will end them. They currently have end dates of June of 2021. And will the federal government and other provincial governments continue to provide additional supports has yet to be seen. So an uncertain factor we'll have to watch for. Investments in technology, 40% of firms are going to invest more, 7% average annual growth rate in the next 5 years. So for you startups on the call, this is your opportunity. Think about this. Think about relaunching. There's a huge opportunity for investment in intellectual property products, for services products as we move forward. So keep your eye on it. And I think as one of your earlier speakers said today, hustle, the time to hustle is now. The rise of remote work and e-commerce, a trend that is expected to last here. So 39% of companies are expected to continue on with some form of remote work. 11% of companies that we survey, and we survey about 1,000 to 2,000 companies every month on a rotational basis throughout Canada, and we look at the evolving trends. 11% have already told us that they are going to go and stay with a fully remote workforce. So, as I mentioned before, easy transition for employees, access to a greater global pool of talent, but also more demand for IT services as we pivot to this. The other piece is e-commerce. So you can only imagine, Shopify now, one of the largest companies in Canada. Lightspeed just did an acquisition in the United States. This is all about e-commerce. 50% of Canadian companies were not on the web or on the internet pre-pandemic. So you think about it right now. If you're not on the internet, you're not on the web with your business, you really don't exist. So you can understand the incremental growth that companies like Shopify are seeing. So 6% of Canadian consumers have increased their online purchases since the pandemic began. 32% of Canadians have already said, we're not going back. I mean, whether it's ordering your groceries online, curbside pickup or Uber Eats, whatever it happens to be, this trend is not going back. It will continue and it will increase. And it's more efficient, frankly, at the end of the day, not only for businesses, but for consumers. So last point here, confidence in the recovery, it remains fragile. Consumers and business confidence, they're slowing. And you can see the drop here in 2020 when the pandemic hit, starting to come back. But overall here, businesses and consumers, the confidence in investment is fragile. I believe this represents a huge opportunity for startups. And here's the reason why. Some big companies will have the investment and the resources to pivot, and they will have pivoted fast their businesses and adapted new services to the pandemic. Other companies, some of them too big, they haven't had the ability to. But in December of 2020, there were fewer bankruptcies last fiscal than there were in December of 2019. That means our economy is it did come back, but it's also being artificially propped up. And when the economy starts to fully reopen up, the government subsidies fall away, some companies aren't going to make it. That's going to open up new markets, and those new markets will be ready for new businesses, new startups to emerge, maybe tackle them differently. Some companies will fail, and the more innovative ones will take over, and the startups will find room for themselves as well. So watch for it. And I think starting in Q3 of this year, we're going to start to see some problems emerge for some companies, but also I think some rebirth. So I'll finalize here with five strategies to get ahead. I'm starting to run over time, but I'll cover these off quickly. In a competitive market, think about these things. I talked about talent, recruiting globally, talked about retaining your skilled employees. You're going to have to find ways, even as a startup, to keep some of your people around. And whether that's maybe a safe agreement for future equity in the company, the brand you're creating, passion and purpose go a long way to creating engagement in employees. But are you creating the right brand and passion and purpose in the company you're trying to create? One is getting out of your niche. And as I said, a lot of companies won't get out of their niche. Some will. Some will be agile and they'll find new markets and new services to offer. Others won't. But one really needs to look at where the opportunities are going to be. I talk about preserving the core business, and as startups, this is an opportunity. Venture capitalists are going to be selective about future investments. Some companies will preserve the core, but maybe to their detriment, where they'll become extinct. And I think if they don't adjust sufficiently, their business model is not going to work in the future. And I mentioned cybersecurity only because I was with a group of 20 CEOs about a year ago. One of them had to leave the room for about a day and a half because his business, and it was a logistics business for North America, it got locked down because of a cybersecurity incident. He had to pay a ransom. And you think about logistics, his customers, he's got to get stuff moving day to day, minute by minute. When he came back to the session we were having, he told the group about what happened. And 8 other CEOs in the room put up their hand and started sharing their stories about similar attacks on their data. So things like systems, security, cybersecurity, anti-phishing solutions, education of employees in this regard is critical going forward. So I'll share with you one last thing, and that's a little bit about Joel here. He runs a company called Transport Genie. Transport Genie actually had IoT solutions and sensors that tracked in the agricultural industry the movement in trucking of animals. So his industry worked with his partner Marlex during the early stages of the pandemic to come up with the tracking system for people in nursing homes and in large warehouses and production facilities in Southern Ontario, so that he could retrace employees where they were in the plant in the event of a pandemic. Some employees only work in a certain section of a plant, and rather than shut the whole plant down, they could go back and retrace with these sensors and these technologies where that employee was. So it's a good example of Joel who transitioned. So just to close off here, folks, resiliency in the tech industry, I think a faster recovery for you. I think there's a new virtual economy. I think there's lots of investment by private industry that's going to go into technology. And I think there's opportunities for rapid growth. So be ready. And all I say is hone your startup and be ready to go for it. So with that, I'll close and thank you. And I'll turn it over to our hosts here.
Awesome, Michael. That was an incredible talk, and the QEC team sincerely thanks you for taking the time. And I know we already have a couple of questions popping up here, so if you don't mind and you have a bit of time, we can maybe try to field those.
Sounds good. I'll stop sharing my screen here. I hope that worked.
Perfect. Yeah. So the first question is, since that you mentioned that remote work will continue to last, what do you anticipate companies will do with their office spaces?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's happening all over the place. We already know that even the WeWork model is not necessarily seeing itself fulfill. And I think what we're in certain markets, and I think it's market specific. So if you look at, I'll use Canada as an example, but the Canadian marketplace of Vancouver and Toronto, for example, continue to have large demand for office space. They're not overbuilt, but some other sectors and some other markets are. And frankly, what's going to happen is it's just going to take time. And I'll use Calgary as an example with the downturn in the energy sector. They've got at least a 15-year supply of office space. Some of it's being repurposed to combinations of retail, commercial, office, condo, and apartment. So you're seeing those models emerge and or retrofits occurring. You're also seeing floor plates where one company might take a full floor plate. They're already being divvied up. And my company is a good example. I just moved into the Edison building, and we've only taken a smaller floor plate. It's been divvied up, and we've got some e-commerce companies on our floor. So it's kind of neat the way it's starting to evolve already.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a really well thought out answer, and I think that makes a lot of sense. So the next question we have is that, given you've had a lot of experience with new companies, what's an example of a company that adapted really well to COVID, and how do you think other companies can learn from that?
Yeah, really good question. I guess a couple things I would answer here. A lot of companies adapted really well, really quickly. And there's a number of fronts on this. Some companies with their existing services that they provided, the first thing they had to do actually was take care of their employees. So they had to make sure their employees were safe. So most companies put things in place like protocols for staff, shifts, and putting their employees in small groupings. And I saw numerous of examples of that in various manufacturing and office environments. Other companies had to change their service offering. I can think of one. We had one company here in the chemical industry that they're in the environmental protection type of chemical industry. And one of the things that, as you can recall, there was a shortage of at the first part of COVID was hand sanitizer. But part of what this company was doing, they already had a ship with containers of alcohol and the right chemicals for hand sanitizer on its way from China. They were actually able to pivot out of industrial environmental chemicals into hand sanitizer in bulk quantity, actually, which then they supplied to. They were almost like a manufacturer supplying it to a middleman, and they literally did that within weeks. The great thing about them is they ended up having a monopoly. I mean, they were getting product that was on its way here, and they were actually able to ship that. They did it ethically, though. They didn't mark up their product. They didn't. You know, everybody needed this. They knew they had to be responsible, pivot, get it out into the marketplace. And do it with integrity. And I'll tell you, I know their CEO very well, and they did that, and they turned it around, and they turned it around. And sure, they had a margin on it. They didn't have a margin on it that capitalized, unethically, and certainly in my view.
Yeah, hopefully that's a great answer. Hopefully lots of the competitors will learn from that. And while COVID is not new anymore. People are still adapting to it, and hopefully you can kind of learn from companies like that. So, sorry?
I was just going to say it's about your reputation in the marketplace. And when you have a reputation and a brand in the marketplace and you're doing business with the public, particularly in a pandemic where you're trying to save lives and help people and do it fast and quick, you know, your reputation as you build it, you know, I used to have a dish of rice seeds on my desk, and you put one every day that you build your reputation. You know, you put one kernel of rice in the dish. But if you falter once on your reputation and your integrity, you spill that dish, they all come out. And it's very, very hard to rebuild that brand, particularly as a corporate entity. Your customers will notice.
Mm-hmm. Very insightful. So next is, we have another question from an anonymous attendee. It says, so you talked about the importance of global recruiting. What are the best ways companies can improve their outreach on an international scale and improve retention with a diverse set of employees?
Oh, that's a really good question, and one that I'm not even sure I'm fully capable of answering, to be perfectly honest with you, particularly because I haven't had a ton of experience personally in global recruitment. But I do know that a lot of the companies we do deal with workers all over the place. The biggest thing that I've heard from companies is that if you're going to open up and do business in a remote market, you have to go find someone in that remote market. And depending on the level and the type of individual you're recruiting. So if it's specific task-based, yeah, you know, you can almost contract hire for that. But if you're looking at wanting to bring someone in, into your company more on a permanent basis in a foreign market, my experience from businesses that we've dealt with says, you as the CEO go into that market and look at acquire someone locally who knows the market and who also knows the I'll call it the client base or the connectors in that market that you're looking to serve, because there's a familiarity, you get to know them, and you build a bridge. So that's probably the deepest I can go on that. I'm sure there's others that can, maybe other guests that can provide more insight than that for you, Mark.
Yeah, that's awesome, and then I'm sure that was really great insight, even if others have different opinions. But looks like we have time for one more question, and then we'll go into announcing the top 6. So Lijo said, Michael, what are your thoughts on Benevity's acquisition just last month and what it means going into the future?
Yeah, I mean, I represent the Business Development Bank of Canada. So, you know, I think Benevity's acquisition is probably good for the company. They'll have lots of capital, but I'd like to see more Canadian companies stay Canadian. So, you know, there needs to be. I'll use Skip the Dishes as a good example. Skip the Dishes and you know, was acquired out of the UK, but that whole industry is again going through a bit of a change, right? What's the delivery model going to look like? And now the companies that are, and the restaurants that are procuring through Skip, for example, are looking at other methods because of cost efficiency. There's a cost to being Skip. Benevity, I think, is a great company. They do great things. I think they can go global and they can take their business model even further than they currently have. So I don't think the acquisition's a bad thing. I just hope that the talent stays here in Canada and that they grow in Canada from I'll call it a head office perspective or their Canadian roots, and that it doesn't get torn away from our country. Canada, you know, we're small on the global scale, right? So you know, it's nice to keep the intellectual property and the talent and everything in Canada and grow it. I know that's not always realistic given the need for talent. and where you have to go. So the US and other global markets are pretty big players. But I'd like to see some of you stay in country as you get huge. So
I'm sure a lot of us will. Canada's our home. So, but anyways, Michael, thank you so much. It was a great speech and great hearing your thoughts on all these questions. I'm sure that the entire crowd is both inspired and ready to take on new heights after hearing kind of your outlook on the tech industry. And again, we really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Mark, and again, thanks to the committee, to the startup contenders. Go hard. I'm also going to put a plug in for our website, bdc.ca, because there's tons of resources, whether it's a business plan or thoughts on acquisition or growing your company. It's like a library in itself on our website, and we make it that way on purpose. So good luck, everybody, in the competition. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Now I'll pass it off to Nick and George to do what they need to do.
Perfect. Thanks, Michael. Really appreciate it. That was really great. So yeah, without further ado, let me just share my screen here and we'll get going with the announcement. Perfect. Okay.
Moment of truth.
Yeah. So we've had a great first day here. Started off the day with a speech by Kevin and then Kosi, and then went through some networking in the top 15 pitches. So today has been a full day of chatting with each other, learning from each other, and I think learning new insights. And after speaking with the judges today, they're absolutely blown away by the quality of competitors out this year. I know me and George, for the past 3 years, every year we keep coming back and we keep getting blown away by the top notch that comes out to the competition. And I guess, just firstly, we'd like to say thank you to the judges that came out to the top 15 this year and took the times out of their afternoon to judge and the insights they were able to share. I guess without further ado, we'd love to announce the top 6 teams that will advance to next round. So we have a slide here for each team that will kind of advance. So the first team that will advance to next round is Pharma Assess.
Awesome. And then the second team is After Sell.
And then the third team is AI Site.
And fourth, Meaningful Work.
And fifth, Aura Blue.
And for the last and final team that will be advancing to the top 6 for tomorrow, it is Arteca. Thank you, all of you, for coming out tonight. I know a lot of you, this might not be the results that you hoped for, but we are still hoping that you look forward to coming out tomorrow. There is still prizes to be won. If you didn't make it in the top 6, we still have the Innovation Award, which is for $2,500, as well as other in-kind prizes that are open to the entire top 15. So still do come out tomorrow and still qualify for those prizes, as well as we will have a social coming up later today for everyone and all of the competitors. That'll be from 7:45 to 8:45, so there'll be a short break after this. You can access it through All in the Loop. It'll be a nice way to meet all of the competitors, have a little bit of a networking session, and meet all of the teams in a more relaxed environment. And for tomorrow, we have another really exciting day lined up for all of you. We'll have a morning reception similar to what we did today. Then we'll go into an entrepreneurship panel. We have 4 people who have started companies and been part of organizations, and they'll talk to you about their experiences. Then we'll go into Travis Rossbach, who created HydroFlask, sold his company for over $200 million. He'll talk to you about that experience, and then we'll have a short lunch break. We'll go into the top 6 pitches. We'll see them present. And then we'll go into another workshop where we can all learn a little bit more about user interface with Interpix design. We'll take a short dinner break. Then we'll go into Stephanie Ciccarelli, who will be presenting to you a little bit more about her company and her experiences founding voices.com. And finally, we'll have our final ceremony. We'll announce the top 3 winners, as well as all of the other awards that have been won, the innovation prizes, Coventus, all of them will be announced tomorrow at the final ceremony. And finally, we'll have another social at the end of that day with the entire teams. and hopefully the connections we make over QEC over the next day or two, it will allow us to build on for the future. And it's always one of the most exciting parts of QEC. So I hope everyone still comes out tomorrow, and I hope to stay in touch over the next day, and see you all at the social later today.